talk about your pain, can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity, and make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste the Therapist. Let's go.
Hey, hi. Oh wait, let me get my mic. Actually, let me make sure I'm on the mic. Let me just make sure I'm on the mic. Audio. All right. Hello. Okay, I'm on the mic now. Let me just make sure. Settings, audio, iPhone, MacBook. Okay. All right, this is good. Hi. So for people that are watching me on the replay, thank you for watching me. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. Okay, you can hear me good? All right. The last week's episode, I wasn't on the mic and it bothered me when I was editing. So hi, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist and I have a podcast. These episodes that I do on Wednesday do stream on my audio podcast. So if you are into podcasts and you enjoy these episodes, you could find a ton of them there. But my goal is to talk about things that we go through and help you think about ways to deal with them. I recognize, because of the nature of the work that I do, is that a lot of times we're going through similar things. The solution is the same. And there's a lot of knowledge out there on how to operate in life when things come up. But the part about how to do it, I think people struggle with. So last week we talked about sleep. So if you struggle with sleep and want to look at a more holistic way of working on your sleep, you can check out that episode. It's on social media. It's for TikTok, because TikTok doesn't allow you to keep things there, but it's on Facebook, YouTube, and on all the audio podcasts. Today we're talking about procrastination. And, I recognize that so many people do not understand how to get things done. Procrastination, sometimes people tell me they work well under pressure. And I'm always reminding them that you don't work well. Things get done, and your reward for waiting to the last minute, it worked out because things got done. But do you really work well under pressure? I think when you think about the anxiety and all the mental ailments that come up for you when you're trying to get things done last minute, it's hard. A lot of times people will say, I'll do this tomorrow, or maybe I'll try tomorrow, or do it next week, or start on a Monday. I've had people say, let's say, what's today's Wednesday? Today's Wednesday. Let's say something happened today. They'll say, like, I can't wait for Friday. I can't wait for this week is over. And I think about how we put off our happiness or our peace of mind for future. If something happened today, the situation is resolved. What I want you to think about is, like, how do I release this to move on? Because tomorrow is a new day. It doesn't have to be about a Monday or a Friday. It's the way you're framing it. There's so much power in our mind that goes very underutilized because we weren't taught, how to deal with these things. You can have all the knowledge in the world. A lot of people, I watched this lady organize her fridge yesterday. And anytime I watch something that's inspiring to me on social media, I actually save it. I have a folder for cooking, for cleaning, for recipes. So, if social media isn't inspiring, if it's leaving you feeling drained, pay attention to what you're doing on it. But I looked at the video, and then it inspired me to organize my fridge in a certain way. A lot of people are looking at people that may be inspiring or ideas, and then that's it. They're looking at it and they're like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll try it. There's no intention behind it. You haven't saved it anywhere. It's in your head. And nothing gets done. So you have all these ideas that are just in your head, and nothing's happening. So the knowledge is there around things that we can do. There's plenty of books, right? There's plenty of podcasts. There's plenty of things that are available to help us with what we are going through. So I want you to think about something that you have been putting off as we're talking about this, because my hope is that, like, after today's episode or talk, that you can really think about, like, how can I take action today, right? Not tomorrow, today. Um, Not getting stuck on the goal, but paying attention to the journey. This is important. A lot of times when I ask people about success, they will mention, like, oh, I'm not like there yet because I haven't gotten this degree, or I'm not married, or I don't have a house. A lot of this stuff around the way you're framing um, your goals sometimes is based off of what culture says, right? So certain cultures, if you're not married or if you don't have kids, it's kind of like, are you even successful? If you are not a doctor or a lawyer, like, does it even matter what you're doing, even if you're happy doing it, right? So paying attention to some of the ways that you have viewed your goals, right? The goals are fine. So I'm not here to challenge your goals. If your goal is to be a doctor or a lawyer, that's great. But do I wait until I get that degree to say, like, oh, I'm okay, I'm happy, I'm content, right? And because what happens is when you get that degree, I promise you, your system is looking for the next thing to be content about. So as you're thinking about this idea of getting things done, right? And we're talking about working on the journey, it's really important to think about, um, how do I celebrate the moments to get in there? Like, yes, I want to be this doctor or lawyer, but it's going to take some time. So, yes, I'm in my first year of college. How do I celebrate that instead of not recognizing? A lot of times we're not recognizing our accomplishments or the things that we're doing to get there. Yes, I said I wanted to work out 5 days a week, but I have never worked out before. And I've never been to the gym. It's very intimidating. But you know what I'll do? I'll go and walk around my neighborhood. So, do I wait until I get to the gym to be happy about the steps that I'm taking to get to where I need to be? And I think that's the issue, is that because you're not at the goal, you're not at the finish line, you find yourself struggling with the start process because it's going to take too long, or, there's a lot of excuses you give yourself, as opposed to, like, in order for me to get to the finish line, I actually do have to take a step forward. And how do I take a step forward, right? There's small steps to take. You think about babies literally don't just start walking. I'm sure there's a story, some kid, you got some smart kids that probably just get up. But majority of the babies, they're crawling first, right? They had to crawl, right? They also had to fall down and get back up. But eventually they start walking. And guess what's keeping them motivated? Everybody around them are walking, right? So their goal is always in front of them. And so even though they're like stumbling and falling and getting back up, they're happy about the progress, and they stay determined. So when I think about self-discipline, right? Because self-discipline is something that could be standing in your way, right? So I just want to put this up on the screen. So it says, what is being self-disciplined? Self-discipline is the ability to control and regulate your own behavior, actions, and decisions so you can achieve goals or keep to a set of principles, even in the face of temptations, distractions, or challenges. That's something that's really hard to do. Even in the face of distractions and challenges or comfort, right? Sometimes the comfort of laying in the bed when the alarm goes off feels good, right? But delaying that satisfaction for that moment so that you can find yourself getting yourself to a better start, right? So when you think about self-discipline, it's important to understand that this is you doing things even when nobody's looking, right? There are so many, like, people see the finished product of Celeste the Therapist and the things that I do. They don't see the stuff that I'm doing in between time, to get to that point. There's a lot of self-discipline that goes into everything that I do. The people that you admire that you may consider successful or doing things, and it just seems like they just get it done. I promise you, there are things that they're doing behind the scenes that you may not realize is happening. So really be mindful of that. And some examples of self-discipline is taking responsibility. Taking responsibility even when it's not your fault is so hard to do. That's a that's a concept that was new to me, where like it's like, no, it's like, you did this. I felt like I would hold on to a lot of things um because of my lack of taking responsibility. How did I show up in this person's life? What did I do that allowed them to think that it was okay? When I'm working with people and they're talking about these things, and whatever happened in that friendship or relationship could have been egregious, but I'm big on challenging people and asking, okay, how do you show up differently? Taking responsibility just allows you to feel like you have power. Making choices and not excuses, right? That's something that is important. If you find yourself saying like, oh, I can't do it because of this. Let's just say, for instance, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like I literally couldn't work out because I didn't have a babysitter. And I couldn't afford the gym, right? That was a real thing that took place. So I acknowledged that, right? Like it would be easier to just be away from the kids and like do my own thing. But at the time, like I wasn't able to do that. So instead of me just making an excuse, which was a real valid excuse, I looked outside the box, right? I don't get stuck in what I don't have. I acknowledge what I don't have, but then I work on looking at what I have. And so I had access to YouTube. The kids had to go to sleep. And so when they went to sleep, that's when I decided to put in the work, right? So when you are this thing that I asked you to think about, I want you to think about, what are you holding off on and why? When you think about the excuse, which is, it could be a valid excuse, but don't get stuck in the barriers. You could train your mind to get to accustomed to that. Like my mind is so conditioned to not getting stuck in the barrier. Like people in my life were like, man, you're always able to see a different side, or you're always to pull out the beauty in the struggle. It wasn't the case all the time. I trained my system to think of life that way because I've accepted that life gets hard. I've accepted that so many things happen outside of our control. But what I refuse to accept is a life of misery, a life of chaos, and a life of no peace, right? And I recognize, in order to have a life where there's peace, like I have to accept, what are the other options, right? So keep that in mind, is making choices and not excuses. Delayed gratification is another thing to think about. Like I use this example a lot. Sleeping in, it feels good. Like that's a real gratification. Like I'm gonna be honest, like sleeping feels good. But then if I have so many things to do on my plate, I'm going to pay for it later. So I delay that gratification of sleeping in so that I can get things done and feel better about the day. I hope that makes sense. So delayed gratification, meaning that, yeah, I acknowledge that, certain things feels better in the moment, or you know partying may feel better in the moment, but then if you have a 10-page paper to do, right, like was it even worth it? Because now you're sitting in anxiety and you haven't even started the process because you wanted to hang out with your friends. So being mindful of delayed gratification, like the things that you put off today that may feel good, remembering that doing that will allow you a different ease in the future. So the last thing about examples of self-discipline is saying no to things that harm us and yes to things that help us grow. Um, and this could be across the board, right? It could be with friends. It could be with the choices that you make. It could be even with finances. Finances is another thing around delayed gratification, right? Uh, it would be nice to have, I want this mixer so bad, because I've been into baking. It would be nice to have a mixer, but it's like $500. I can't spend $500 on a mixer right now. And so instead of me like doing that, like I made sure that I'm waiting until it goes on sale. And when you're saying yes to things that are good for you, even if it's vegetables, right? Like even if it's getting up earlier than the kids so that you can get some you time in. Really thinking about what am I saying yes to? But sometimes you're saying yes to things that are harming you. Like if somebody needs something from you and you already had your schedule slotted out, right? That's important to think about because maybe you haven't been used to saying yes to yourself or have been taught how to choose you and your needs. As an adult, it feels hard. And a lot of people don't understand that because you think you have control or you think you're in control, but are you really in control if you're more worried about someone else and how they're going to view you saying no, right? So, really being mindful that you are prioritizing your needs because if you're not okay, your kids aren't going to be okay. Whoever else is in your life that you're supporting won't be okay. So, be okay with saying yes to yourself even if you're not used to it. So because you're not used to it, that can feel really hard. And it could feel like you're doing something wrong when you say yes to yourself, right? Me like going on vacation without my kids, it can feel hard. It still feels hard at times, but I don't get stuck in the feeling and not do what I need to do for myself. I remind myself that I need this time and they're going to be fine. Like I have to have a lot of self dialogue. Being a mom or a parent is the one area that I'm always like super sensitive about, meaning like I'm more mindful and because I don't want to do any harm. So I'm really conscious of what I say, how I say it. Sometimes I second guess myself. So that's one area where I find myself having to challenge some of the ways that I think, right? And for you, it may be something else, but really being mindful of those areas that you may find yourself struggling in. Now, the rewards of self discipline, right? Because self discipline sounds like, oh my gosh, I got to like do all these things, I got to be on point. But I just want to give you a couple rewards of like why self discipline can be important. So, peace of mind, knowing you are in control of your actions. I promise you that peace of mind of being in control of your actions feels good. So many people feel like they don't have power over their life. And I understand how that happened. I understand how that came about. But when you have peace of mind that you can like, yeah, this happened, but there's been a lot of barriers in my life, a lot of things that have taken place. And you wouldn't even know by the way I operate. But because I know I have power, like no one can take that away from me, right? The barrier is it is what it is, but I recognize my power and I recognize that so many people they do not recognize their power. And so that's something that's so important to think about. And the other reward of self discipline, this is a really big one and important one to remember, is that your confidence grows when you do what you say you're going to do, right? And the last step, I'm going to talk about solutions on how to work on getting things done. But you'll be so surprised when you start to even like my clients, I'll be like, let's just start with making up your bed. Maybe if you make up your bed every day, it may seem small, but if that's not something that you typically do, just starting with making up your bed and doing it on a consistent basis where you're building a routine, right? Like you're building a routine. Like I'll have them come and they'll be like, oh my God, I made up my bed all week, and I literally get excited. Like I've helped people that work with me get excited for their life just as much as I'm excited because I recognize that small step of making up your bed in the morning will help your system begin to understand that you can do it. A lot of times people say, "Oh, I can't do it," or "I'm not this." And it's like it's not true. Just like people say, like, "Oh, high blood pressure, diabetes run in my family." I say the lifestyles running your family, right? Like the stressors that happen, or the dietary way you eat runs in your family. But it's not that like the diagnoses running your family. What leads you up to that diagnosis runs in your family, and that's the same thing for yourself and how you are. You became the way you are because of some of the ways you've had to survive. And that's really like that's such a heavy load that gets lifted off of people when they're able to make connections and helping them see like, okay, you do this because of this. Like it really takes a heavy load off of people, which is so important. So solutions, right? So we just talked about like procrastination and kind of like why it happens, and then we thought about like self-discipline, and I brought up some examples on self-discipline and the rewards of being self-disciplined. So like if you want to work on creating change where you do what you say you're going to do, I want to help you with that. The first thing I want you to think about is that action is key, right? um, when my alarm goes off, if I take time, if I just sit in bed, I promise you, like, there's a possibility I might talk myself out of getting up, and that's happened. But I do recognize that I need to just get up. I just need to do it. I don't need to overthink it. For all my overthinkers out there, where you're like, oh, don't overthink it. Just get up and do it. So action is key. Like, it's great that you're gathering information. It's great that you see people that are doing the things you want to do. But a lot of people are sitting on so much things that people are waiting for. One of my favorite motivational speakers, um, Les Brown, excuse me, said there are so many dreams, or so many people in the graveyard. There lies a lot of dreams where people didn't do what they knew they could have done or should have done, right? And so, I think the way we do life as if we have all this time, and to tell ourselves tomorrow, like, why tomorrow, why not now, right? And even if the thing, like, the let's say it's a big thing you want to do and it can't be now today, but why not start the process now, right? Like, the barrier comes up, okay, but what can I do, right? So action is key. The next thing is identifying your why. That's important. When I started coming on social media years ago, um, I had this passion to want to help people because, like, I recognize the flawness in the way that we think, especially in the Black community. And so, obviously, God's given me the gift of being able to be empathetic and understand people, right? That's not everyone's gift, right? Some people, the financial people, that I don't got that gift for numbers. The people that can listen to music and play it, like, that's freaking amazing to me. I don't got that gift, but I do recognize I do have a gift to be able to understand people and help people connect the dots, right? And so, even though mental health was very unpopular when I started talking about it, very unpopular. I have a lot of people that have been following me from the beginning. Donald on YouTube. There's people that have been following me from the beginning and have always been super supportive, but it wasn't like a cool thing to do. And that didn't matter to me. You know why? Because I thought about my why. Like, my why was so much more powerful than the fact that it wasn't popular. Today, 2024 is super popular. But when I started, it wasn't. And I didn't feel no type of way about putting information out there because I recognized that people needed to hear it. I recognized, like, people were silently suffering. And so there's some people, they don't have no passion to be like doing this work, and that's totally fine. But really understanding your why, right? So that goal I told you to think about that you've been putting off, ask yourself, like, why do I want to do this, right? Because your why can be stronger than not feeling like it. My why for getting up in the morning and starting my day with me is because I recognize the difference when I don't. Like, I recognize I actually feel good when I do start my day with me. So when I was going to school and I started late. I didn't even take SATs. I didn't know about college. I just, like, finagled my way and figured it out. And it was complicated trying to work, go to school, do internship, and then in the middle, like, I kept my why in mind, right? The feeling, like, there's days I may not feel like doing a podcast or doing or uploading it or doing the work behind the scene, but because of my why, I do it, right? I really I'll stay in rhythm and I'll do it. um and this goes into my next point of understanding the power in routine. there's so much power in routine. Like I do have a system that I'm able to utilize. So, Wednesdays I upload these episodes. Tuesdays, I'm just giving an example. Tuesdays I'll upload episodes where I've talked to people, and I've been doing that for the last few years. That there's Monday nights or Tuesday nights where I may not feel like it, but because of the routine and because of my discipline, the feeling doesn't matter, right? If I did everything according to what I felt like, I wouldn't continue moving forward, right? If you did everything, if you're doing everything based off of feeling and you're telling yourself that, I don't know where the motivation is, or I'm waiting for motivation, I promise you it's going to be hard for you to get the goals done and get the things done that you say you want to get done. I always tell people, like, if you have a job and you've been working there, I promise you there's days you don't feel like going to work. Maybe every now and then you may call out, but you're not going to just not show up, right? Why is that? Because you're a survivor, right? Like if you don't work, you don't get paid, your bills won't get paid. So it's important to understand that if I can do this as a survival thing, I can also do this when it comes to living life. But because I'm not used to living life, I have to reacclimate my system to it, right? Like I have to understand that it's going to be uncomfortable. But if you don't start now, then you'll always live in the space of like, damn, what if I had have done that, right? So that's important. Um, Surround yourself with reminders. That's important. Earlier in the episode, I talked about the baby and why the baby is able to keep going because of the constant reminders around the baby, right? Everyone's walking, right? And so, like, if there's something you want to do, when I wanted to start podcasting, I remember I read a book twice about how to podcast and how to put it out. I started attending events. I started following other podcasters to kind of see how it worked, right? I engulfed myself in the podcasting world. I didn't know anyone personally that podcasts, right? And I like to give examples with me because I want people to see like how realistic it can be, and not get stuck in where I don't know nobody that podcasts, right? And so whatever it is that you want to do, thank goodness for the power of the internet. This is one of the great things about it, is that you can actually do those things through researching on your own. Yeah, I'm 41. I had to go to the library to research. Like, these y'all, if you never had to go to the library to find a book and look it up, hey Justin, if you've never went to the library and had to look up something for research, be grateful, because we had to go to the library. And so the power of the internet is that you can actually research and do the things that or research the things that you say you want to do. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about how do I get things done, when you're thinking about the goals that you want to work on. Now, make your steps actionable and small. I talked about making the bed, right? That's a really small step. Or like maybe your goal is to actually go to the gym and work out 3 to 5 days a week. That's, but then you're not doing that, but you're walking. That's a small actionable step, right? So if you start thinking about that big goal that you want, right, that I asked you to think about, what are the steps that are going to get you there, right? Is it, oh, let me start networking, talking to someone? That's one step. What's the next thing I could do? Oh, let me look for a book, right? If you don't have the money, the library, you can check out books for free in the library. You can go on the internet. There's so, like, literally on YouTube, whatever you want to learn about, you can find YouTube University. Let me tell you, your girl learned how to cook on YouTube. I learned how to garden on YouTube. Um, what else did I learn on YouTube? Motivational videos, when I started like getting into like watching them. This is way before I wanted to do a podcast and I wanted to work on my mental health. Like literally you can find everything on YouTube, right? So really being mindful that you're making your steps actionable and small. Like don't overcomplicate it. The last thing I want to say about this is celebrate the moments. Like when you make up the beds, good job. Like maybe you grew up in a system where I get to work with so many people, different cultures. I'm not like going to name any culture, but so many different, not even just culture, Americans who do the same. Um, it's funny. I don't consider whatever. But we do the same thing. And I think that parents, I learned this recently, like back in during slavery time, and it's for the Black community. Um, Parents had to talk down about their child and their abilities, because if they didn't want the slave owner to know about their abilities and take them away. Like, I had no idea. I hear a lot of hard stories about how parents would hey, you're not doing this, or blah blah. I think part of that's the reason. Another part, I think, especially immigrant families, they want their child to be successful based off of their mindset of success, right? And not have to struggle. So let me point out all the things you're doing wrong, right, so that you can get it right. And then you do those things that they point out, you do it, there's always something else, right? That voice of all of these things that you're doing wrong, you become an adult and that voice sticks with you, right? And so maybe like growing up, making up the bed was never a big deal, and so it feels like, why do I need do it? Like, the thing about the mind is that it's malleable. You can recalibrate it. Just because you grew up in a system the way you did, acknowledge it, grieve it, accept it, and then how do I move on, right? That's something that's important to do. If you're not celebrating those moments you're taking to getting things done, I promise you, you're going to find yourself tapping out all the time, because instead of you looking at the where you are in the picture of what you're doing, unfortunately, you're only looking at how far you have to go and what you haven't done. And a lot of that is conditioned from childhood, and this isn't about blaming anybody, right? Because some people, their parent was a provider, and they recognize the struggle. And so it's not about a really good book too for people that may, let me just grab my book, that may have struggled with that struggles with their dynamic with their parent, or like looking at that relationship. This is a really good book. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents: How to Heal from Distant, Rejected, or Self-Involved Parents. Because this is it's such a complicated thing for people. I've never been talked down to, so until I went into private practice, I had no idea that happened um, to kids growing up. And until I started working with people, I recognized the pattern in how their inability to celebrate their moments or highlight their success stems from the fact that it didn't happen growing up. I do think the parents love them, right? It's not like emotional abuse, but like neglect, right? Not so you don't even know how to praise yourself. And imagine how harmful that is when you're with yourself 24/7 if you're not even praising yourself, right? So start to praise yourself. That's going to be important. I struggle to work out or get into that thought process. And so that's why just getting up and walking, they have so many, like, social media shows all of these workout gurus and all these machines. I think during the pandemic, everybody was getting what is that machine called? It's expensive too, but one of those like those expensive machines, like I would have people like, yeah, I'm waiting for my machine to work out. I was like, you can start now. You know what I mean? You can literally go and walk and start now and start the process. And then the machine comes, guess what? It's collecting dust. And I'd be like, you could give me that machine. I can't think of the name of it, but it's one of those cool machines. And so, I think for this Peloton, yeah. Yeah, Peloton. I can't believe I couldn't think of it because everybody was getting it but me. But their marketing is good. Everyone's at home and they're like, oh, I can, their marketing was so good, and you're thinking like, okay, when I get that, I'm going to be able to do it. And it's like, it's not about you not having a Peloton that's not allowing you to do it. So it's just so interesting how that happens. So really be mindful on how you're framing things in your head about your process for starting the process, right? So just getting up and walking, there's so much power in just being able to walk. A lot of people that had a weight loss journey, it started with walking. So Don't underestimate that. Unfortunately, the TVs and the social medias won't won't show you like a slower process of like, oh, like you're feeling sluggish, like have you had any fruits or vegetables, have you walked, like, you start thinking that way, how they gonna get paid, how you gonna buy product, so you'll never see commercials that motivate you in that way. You'll never really see content that motivates you in that way unless they're trying to sell something. So then you have to be not of the world. Like, you have to really separate yourself from like renewing your mind, separating yourself from the content, the everyday content of the world. That's why taking breaks on social media, not being on it all day, because you don't realize how much we're consumed by the thought process of the world. I always say, if we lived in a Buddhist nation, the way we think about our lives would look different. The way we process when things don't go well, the way we compare, like we wouldn't do none of the stuff we do. But there's an agenda with the way in America, the way that they operate. And it's like, we want to make sure you stay insecure so you can keep purchasing. And so, that's a big reason, like, I'm able to keep going. I don't think about numbers or how it looks like, because why? Because I'm constantly renewing my mind. Like, I'm literally constantly listening to things that are infiltrating my spirit that will debunk any negative thing that's taken place, right? And so you can have that power too. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it makes sense. I always tell people, anything I ever say, like, if it resonates, like, understand you have power to change, right? As I said earlier, we don't recognize our power because we've never been taught, or, it's never been shown, or we never seen our parents have power, right? There's so many different reasons. I have so much, the first place I worked was at a shelter with white men who struggled with mostly white men, but it was a lot of alcoholism, struggle with alcohol. And even though I didn't look like them, I didn't understand alcoholism, I learned that they had a story. And I think about people that are struggling with not just substances, but different kind of addictions or different kind of turmoils. And I know you have a story, right? And I think about substances, particular, and how, or food addiction, and how, like, people are just walking around trying to mask pain. And my message to you is like, face it, right? Accept it, like, work through it. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is that's going to be the narrative in your mind. Your mind will only know you as a victim. Your mind will only know you as whatever happened. And guess what? Whatever happened could have been 10, 15, 20 years ago. But your mind doesn't know that, because guess what? You're not giving it a new narrative. So give it a new narrative, right? Really start to create action plans on the things that you say you're going to do. You can start to do it. So thank you so much. Excuse me. This episode, it will be on the podcast next week. So anytime if you ever wanted to listen to it again, and also if there's ever a topic that you want me to discuss, you can write on my website anonymously. You can find me at Celeste The Therapist. .com. That's where you can find all of my information. If you're not following, if you haven't liked this and you're watching, like it, share it, and then CelesteTheTherapist.com. That's the website, and all the podcast episodes are there as well. You are so welcome. And I'm gonna say bye to TikTok, and then bye to everyone else. And stream.